Hello again, audiophiles. I am Wave Theory, and here's one that some of you have been waiting for. It is the HE1000se, the full-size, open-back, planar magnetic headphone from HiFiMan. It lists for $3,500 US. HiFiMan sent this to me for review. They have asked for nothing other than a fair and honest evaluation and a link to a review. So all thoughts that you are about to hear are mine and mine alone. But before we get to those, let's do that act of shameless self-promotion.
Hey, thanks for watching this video. Please remember to hit that like button, and if you haven't, please subscribe. Also, I have a Patreon set up so that you can help support me on a monthly basis, and I've set up a PayPal donation so that you can help me out in that way too if a monthly subscription does not make sense for you. Links for all of that, including the benefits, in the description below. Please check those out. All right, on with the show.
Hey guys, real quick, I apologize. The audio on this video, the camera that I use has been frustrating and is giving me lots of trouble and has been pretty unreliable. So for whatever reason, it didn't actually use the lav mic that you see clipped on my chest through this video, and it used its built-in microphone system. So what I say is legible. It sounds okay. It just doesn't sound as clear or as clean as this normally does. And I'm just going to run with it rather than shoot a 40-minute video all over again. Okay? I will work on that in the future. Again, this camera, super frustrating. Anyway, on with the show. All right, and we are back with the review. HiFiMan HE1000se. So, what is this thing? Other than, as I said in the little intro, it is a full-size, and I do mean full-size, planar magnetic headphone, because most of this enormous ear cups area that you see here is home to a massive planar magnetic driver. So there is lots of radiating area, okay, for the membrane in this headphone. All right, and so yeah, open back, and it's also open. Like when you put one of these on and you listen, like you can audibly anyway, just barely tell that there is in fact anything on your head because it is really open. Does not attenuate much at all from the outside world in, does not hold music inside the headphone. It's just going to project it out there and all of that. So if you are in an office situation or anything like that, this is probably not the headphone for you. Just to get that out there. All right. Other than that, what we have here is an updated version of HiFiMan's HE1000 series. Now, the original HE1000, the version 1, dropped in about 2015. Okay, and so if you're watching this video sometime in the future, I filmed this in the middle of October of 2022. All right, so then a little while after the V1, and I think so we're talking around 2016, 2017, I think, HiFiMan dropped the HE1000 V2, which was an update from the V1, of course. They changed the pad shape and material from the V1, and I think they changed the magnet structure a little bit on the ear side from the V1, all that from the V2, and also I think changed the sound signature a little bit, where this was a little bit more warm in its sound than the V1 was. Okay, fast forward to 2017, and HiFiMan comes out with a new flagship, and that is the Susvara, which I have one of these over my left shoulder here as well. And the Susvara was important because it was the first HiFiMan headphone that introduced what they called their stealth magnet technology. 1 year later, in about 2018, HiFiMan revamps their HE1000 line and calls it the HE1000se. That is what is on my head right now, and the SE, I believe, stands for Stealth Edition, not necessarily Special Edition. Stealth Edition, because it is an HE1000 with the stealth magnet tech that was initially developed for the Susvara put into the HE1000 form factor. Okay, so yes, here you have it. This is the Stealth Magnet edition of the HE1000 series. Okay, and I have been looking forward to this one because my HE1000 V2 has been my personal reference for getting close to 2 years now, I want to say. And I love this headphone. It has given me many, many hours of great listening enjoyment. So I was really excited to see what the update could do. Because I have been hearing stealth magnet models from HiFiMan as of late. Ever since HiFiMan started sending me review units, pretty much everything they've sent that has been open back planar has had stealth magnet tech in it. And they have all impressed me. Okay, and Susvara also impressed me, as it should. Okay, but because that one, I think, is the state of the art of non-electric static headphones right now. Okay, even though it's like 5 years old, which is old as far as like anything in the tech industry goes, it still, I think, is the measuring stick and the benchmark. So all of that with some of the tech from there in here, knowing that I love this one, what was this going to do? I was very curious about that and very thrilled when it showed up on my porch. Okay, so the other thing that we're going to do in this review when we get to it is we are going to do a heck of a comparison, right? We will do a direct A-B of these two. I will A-B, talk about the A-B with this one and Susvara, and then also where this fits in the high-end market, because I have had the privilege of reviewing lots of high-end and top-of-the-line headphones. Where does the HE1000se fit in to all of that? Okay, so
Real quick, let's take a look at the magnet structures from the inside. So this is the ear side of each headphone. We have HE1000 V2 here, and then we have HE1000se here. And you can probably already see the difference in the magnet structures here on the ear side. The V2 has like several smaller magnets placed more closely together here on the inside. The SE has these bigger magnets here, spaced a little bit farther apart. So that's one way that you can tell that they have made a change to like the design and the magnet structure and all of that there on the inside. Okay, back to the rest of the review.
On with the review proper, more to the point here. So the rated impedance here is 35 ohms with a sensitivity of 96 decibels per milliwatt, I believe. HiFiMan on their website just says 96 decibels. I think it's per milliwatt, not sure, but that would be my guess. Anyway, the Hekse V2, by contrast, is 35 ohms, so same impedance, but 90 dB in sensitivity. So this is a more sensitive headphone. Like, it's easier to drive than the V2 is. So that is one advantage. So I would say that the SE is a little bit more amp friendly in terms of you don't need as powerful an amp as you do for some of their older models with this particular headphone. In fact, I dare say this is one of the easier driving headphones above $3,000. Like the Meze Elites are easy to drive. The Odyssey LCD5 is easy to drive, but I think this one is like just behind those maybe in terms of how easy it is to drive. So it's a bit unusual in that way, and especially for HiFiMan's line. HiFiMan has been known for their really high-end stuff to be hard to drive, like the Sus, like the Hekse V2, like their HE6 line, you know, that sort of thing. So a little bit more amp friendly there. Okay. Let's look at build and comfort. I mean, you can see that it is basically the same build as the HE1000 series. And in fact, I think they even used the same pads on here as the V2s do. Like, these pads here are older. I have a brand new set to put on them that I just haven't gotten to yet. Okay, but they are the same pad. They are nice and soft now. These still could soften a little bit because this came as a brand new in the box unit, but like, it's the same pad, same shape, same materials, okay, that sort of thing there. You also still have this CNC aluminum construction here and housing with a wood veneer. This is not real wood here, or at least the cup is not real wood. It's a metal housing with a thin wood veneer placed on it here, and I think it looks nice. I mean, it's not particularly eye-catching, but it's also far from ugly. Okay, so there is that. We have, oh, and I should say, like, from a comfort standpoint, the mass of this is, HiFiMan claims, is 440 grams, which is not inordinately heavy. It's not super light either, but because of the huge ear pads and like the large contact area between the pad and the side of the head, and maybe an average amount of clamp here. This does not put head in a vise like Audizies or Sennheisers can do. It's not super loose like sometimes this one can be, although I think that in time this will break into the more soft clamp that this is. Okay, because I think it is the same headband system. The comfort is pretty good. I can wear these for extended periods of time, no issue. Their openness, not only sonically, also translates to the fact that like my ears never get hot inside here either, like they can with some headphones. So that I think is also an advantage. But if you're familiar with how these big HiFiMan planars fit and feel on your head, which I think works for more than it doesn't, that's exactly what you get here. They have a very similar design throughout their line with these style headphones and this kind of headband. Okay, cable. We do need to talk about the cabling. We have dual 3.5 millimeter entry for the cabling here into the ear cups, which is pretty standard for HiFiMan these days. You do not need to worry about having a special wired headphone. Just any standard dual 3.5 millimeter headphone cable will be fine for this one because it's not compatible with HiFiMan's Blue Mini and all of that. The cables that they send though are less than good. Okay, from an ergonomic standpoint anyway. Like they really have a lot of memory. They also feel really weird. It's like sonically they seem fine. They match well to the headphones, but you have this plastic surgical tubing over the wires inside, and the wires really aren't even braided together. I don't know how well this will show up in there. They're not even braided together. They're just sitting in there, and you can feel them slide past one another and slosh around. So this is just really just an ergonomic mess and nightmare of a cable. You get 3 cables in the packaging. All of them, of course, have this dual 3.5 millimeter TRS connection on the headphone end. This one right here is supposedly, I think, a 3 meter long cable, all jangled up in there, twisted and tangled up, with a 4-pin balanced XLR. They also send one that is the same length, that is a 1/4 inch 6.35 millimeter single-ended on the amp end, and then like same thing, only shorter with a 1/4 inch 6.35 millimeter on there. But they all are made this way. And as much as I love HiFiMan's headphones, it is no secret that I really enjoy HiFiMan's open back headphones. Closed backs, ask again later. But their open backs I find phenomenal. But their cabling, I don't know how you're just not flat out embarrassed by that if you're HiFiMan. Honestly, I don't. Okay. Anyway, back at it. I think that's probably enough for the build. I mean, it's like HiFiMan, again, they have a very standardized build at this point, and I think most people know what to expect with that. HiFiMan has had some issues with quality control in the past. This unit here is older now. Like this thing is several years old now. There's really not a whole lot I can complain about it as far as its longevity and its build has gone. I mean, the leather strap here gets a little floppy this way. In my opinion, who cares? Once it's on your head, it doesn't make any difference. Okay, and then this one is in need of new pads. But again, these are several years old pads. Makes sense. And you can get a new set of those pads for like 70 bucks. Okay, but I haven't had any QC issues on this. Everything, I mean, that's no squeak in this motion here. Okay, the head size adjustment has a nice firm snap to it. The clamp, again, is like it holds it on your head well without being super tight. Okay, I don't see any like real issues with like anything being misaligned or anything. Maybe the interior cushioning on this pad is just a little bit unbalanced compared to that one. I don't even know if that matters. I mean, might be able to pinch that back into place too, but I mean, that's it. That's it. I don't hear anything sonically as a result of that. Okay, so the build here I think is pretty good. Okay, let's get into the meat then of the sound. Test gear. Where I need to start. Let's see, DACs that I would have used would have been my Berkeley Alpha Series 2 fed by a Singer SU2 digital to digital converter. Those two connected via AES, and then the Singer connected via USB to my desktop PC. Let's see, also would have used a Schiit Bifrost 2/64. And then amps that I would have used is my standard Vioelectric HPA V281. I've also tried the Phonitor SPL, no, sorry, got those backwards. SPL Phonitor X headphone amp, which I have in for review. That review is coming up soon. That's nearing completion, I think. Also tried Lake People G111 Mark II with this because that's in for review. Briefly tried Topping A90D. Have that somewhere around there. Oh, yeah, it's down there, okay. That's in for review. What else? Well, that's a variety enough. I think, did I have this when I had the Ferrum Ore in? Yes. Ferrum Ore plus Hypsos was also used with these a little bit. Okay, so a variety of things there. Okay, amp-wise. All right, the sound signature. More neutral than the V2. So the V2 has a little bit of warmth to it that is above neutral. All that. So I think you have like a perceptive slight U shape going on here where there is some really good deep sub-bass presence and rumble. That's not really elevated, but it's there enough. Like it's more so than a lot of its competitors, which I think many will interpret as a little bit extra bump in the true deep sub-bass. And then like the typical HiFiMan brightness is here, though it is well controlled. Like I did not find the treble peaky or sharp very often at all, but there is a bit of a treble shelf, which is typical of HiFiMan up there, which some people just aren't going to like. That's going to be too bright for some people, but I think a lot of people are, I mean, it works for me. I like it, all of that. So anyway, there is that. The mid-range, some people might consider the mid-range to be lacking in presence a little bit, and I think that's what it does. That is because HiFiMan's up at this level, they start the ear gain rise. Okay, if you're familiar with the Harman target on frequency response curves and all of that, you get this big hump from like 2 kilohertz up to 6 or 8 kilohertz or something like that, which is known as the ear gain region. And instead of starting at 2 kilohertz with the ear gain region, this one starts at more like 3 kilohertz. So the upper mids there are not as forward as they are on some headphones. So I think this sounds truer to actual neutral, but if you are one who likes the Harman target and thinks the Harman target represents neutral, then you might find the mids a bit sucked out or a bit recessed here on these. I have more comments about that coming up, but that's the general sound signature from a frequency response standpoint. Really good bass extension, lots of air up top. I think the treble is well controlled. It's not really peaky. It's very well tonally balanced, but there is a bit of a treble shelf. And then mid-range that I find pleasingly and accurately present, but again, it's just a little bit off of Harman in the 2 kilohertz range, which some people may find a bit recessed. Okay. Everything else though about this headphone though, I mean, it's incredible. Like I loved this one. This one came in and right away established itself very quickly as like a new reference for me. It took just about everything that was good about this and refined it just a little bit, eked out just a little bit more performance in just about every performance criteria to just create a more well-rounded, more refined, more detailed, just more overall enjoyable presentation than the already thoroughly enjoyable presentation that I got out of these. Okay, so let's pick that apart a little bit. So, resolution. These are fantastically resolving. They are not forward or aggressive in their detail retrieval, but it is definitely there. They go for natural in their detail presentation, I think, where the detail is there at nice, natural, proper levels, but they don't push it in your face. Some people may consider the elevated treble shelf pushing the detail forward, and I can accept how some will feel that way, and I also will echo the general caution, be careful not to perceive a treble peak or elevated treble as extra detail. It's not. I'm also going to add in that you shouldn't do that in any other frequency range either. Having extra mid-range does not mean your mid-range is more resolving. Having more bass doesn't mean your bass is more resolving. We need to stop just pointing to the treble range as the only area where more presence can be interpreted as more detail. But anyway, okay, the resolution on these where it shows up the most is when music gets really, really busy. Finale of the 1812 Overture. The middle of The Poet and the Pendulum by Nightwish. I was just listening to, because I just discovered this one recently, it's from the Destiny video game soundtrack. It is a cover of Paint It Black by Sebastian Baum. Incredible, but lots going on in there and all of that. So anyway, with big classical works or heavy metal, like, Nightwish is like a symphonic metal kind of thing, where there is just so much information in the music, that is where the resolution of HiFiMans, okay, really show up over their competition, in my opinion, and that's because they don't freak out. They don't get muddy. They don't lose their separation ability. They don't lose their ability to separate voices from each other and instruments from each other and voices from instruments and that sort of thing, okay, and they maintain their spatial integrity and all of that. And I don't think you can disconnect those abilities from their ability to resolve and retrieve micro details and all of that, because all of those qualities overlap with resolution to some degree, all that. And I think that's really where the resolution of these shows up. Okay, so excellent resolution. It's a $3,500 headphone, but it resolves up there with most like $4,000 to $5,000 headphones, in my opinion. It's really good. Okay, timbre. The treble again is a little bit elevated, but it's a shelf, so the tonal balance through the treble is really good, where fundamental frequencies and the harmonics of that fundamental are all pretty accurately in line with each other. All that. So cymbals sound really nice and natural to me. And they sound quite natural. They're not quite as tizzy and all that. You kind of hear the metallic nature of their timbre, like the way that a cymbal is supposed to sound metallic, and not like some vocals can kind of have, where they just sound metallic-y in a little bit different way. Okay, so that's really good. I think vocals sound pretty natural. Bass, there's lots of resolution and timbre in the bass. Like if you hear string basses, hey, it does a really good job of pulling out that rosinous sound of the bow sliding across the string. It's kind of like that zizzy sound, but then also just having just this rich, full body to the tones and all of that. So I think very good timbre to go with it. And then arguably the star of the show with these HiFiMans that have this shape, this huge egg-shaped cup in here with the massive planar membrane in there, is the spatial presentation. Like, these just sound enormous. Like, they have this grandiose presentation to them, where when they have to sound epic and enormous, they can do it, right? They can also sound more intimate if your music is smaller, but where they really, really shine is when you want things to sound big. There are few, if any, others out there that can do big and huge and just grand the way that these can. Now, Some people may find if you are more of an intimate music kind of listener, you might find these to be a little bit too big. That doesn't bother me. I listen to a lot of big, grandiose music. So I really like their ability there. But the imaging and the separation within that pretty enormous soundstage is very, very good. You get a very good sense of where a sonic image is. You get good space between them, and you have pretty good, like not best I've ever heard, but still excellent depth to the soundstage. And all of that too with layering. Like when you listen to orchestral performances, it's like you have one row of instruments here, and you have another one behind it, and you have another one behind it. And it's really impressive how it does that. Now, as far as like dynamics and physicality and all of that, HiFiMan is not necessarily known as being head slammers. Okay, so there is a little bit of slam here. It is not overwhelming and all that, but it's also not devoid. It's not going to punch like the Utopia does or like the LCD5 does, okay? But it also has a fairly healthy, slam to it. It'll give you a nice healthy thump, like when you have kick drums and those sorts of things going on, okay? But again, it's not going to rattle your head in that regard, but again, it's not poor, okay? So for me, it is enough. I'm a bit of a bass head. It's enough thump, it's enough slam, it's enough punch, like those sorts of things where it's enough to match the scale of the sound, the enormous spatial scale of the sound, because to really pull off epic, it can't just be big, you kind of have to feel it too. And it brings enough of that low end punch, like presence and slam and all of that, that it aids to the epicness and grandiosity of the sound, I think, here as well. Okay. Are there any drawbacks to its sound? Because I have basically just gone on and on about how wonderful it is here for a little bit. And I think the weaknesses, the relative weaknesses to the sound, I think are going to be mostly in the, determined by what your sonic preferences are. There is going to be too much treble energy in here for some. That's just a fact, okay? It's not peaky. I rarely ever heard it go sibilant or sharp on the wide variety of amps that I tried it on and that I named, but it's just still going to have too much prominence in the treble, just too much, period, and all of that. So even though it's well balanced and well controlled, it's going to be too much for some. And then also that what some people are going to perceive as a recess around 2 kilohertz is going to come across to some as the mid-range is just not as present as they would like it. Okay, so that again is a presence thing. I think one of the reasons that it pulls off spatial stuff so successfully is because that 2 kilohertz range is brought down just a little bit. Because when that range comes forward, it can often push vocals a little bit more forward, and that does kind of compromise spatial integrity to a little bit. So I think there is a bit of a trade-off there. But again, some people just want those vocals brought front and center, and this is not going to do that to the degree that people who are looking for that trait are likely going to want. Okay, so that's another thing to keep in mind there as well. Okay. Let's get into some comparisons then, okay? We'll jump to the obvious one here. This is an interesting comparison, I think, because for one, like this is the updated version of the V2, but also this is the first opportunity that I personally have had to go with something that is not stealth magnet to its stealth magnet, its younger stealth magnet sibling. So what are the differences here? I kind of already let the cat out of the bag a little bit, where take just about everything this does well and improve upon it just a little bit, and you get a much more complete and refined headphone across the board because of those small improvements over many little areas. Okay, signature-wise, this is just a little bit more neutral. This is just a little bit warmer. There's just a little bit more upper bass, lower mid presence here that gives it a sense of warmth that is not present quite to the extent on this one. I think the treble on this one is also not quite as well controlled, so there can be a perceived peak, even though You look at a frequency response graph, again, the treble here still has that HiFiMan shelf, but it's still very well tonally balanced. There's not really a peak there, but it can kind of sound like it with the consonants region, like sibilants, sharp S's and things of that nature, happening a little bit more frequently, or a little bit more often. You got to use the word frequent carefully when you're talking about headphones and all that. Anyway, just a little bit more sibilance and sharpness in the treble on that more often on the V2 than on the SE. The other difference that I noticed, and I was listening to this because there is this school of thought floating around out there in the interwebs on these, that stealth magnet versions of HiFiMan headphones are not doing staging as well as the non-stealth versions. This is the first time, again, I've had one of each to directly compare to each other. The only other one that I've heard was, like, I heard Aria V2, which is not stealth magnet. And then I heard Aria Stealth Edition, which, it's in the name, is the stealth magnet edition. And I think the V2 probably staged a little bit bigger. Again, I was not able to do direct AB with those. It staged a little bit bigger, but I would be stunned to go back and AB Aria V2 and Aria SE and to learn that the V2 was more accurate in its imaging and its separation and its depth, its layering and that sort of thing. I would be very, very surprised if that happens. I would put money on the fact that the Stealth Edition was better than that. I think these two stage at about the same size, honestly. Their perceived dimensions, particularly laterally this way and then height this way, come across to me as about the same. I think the SE is a little bit better at depth. Okay, it's a little bit better this way than the V2. Again, subtle, but I think it's there. It's the positional effects, though. The imaging and the separation and the layering and that sort of thing are more accurate and more real to me on the SE than they are on the V2. And that, I think, deserves one more layer of unpacking. The V2 sounds a little bit discreet in its spatial presentation as compared to the SE. It's still one of the best I've ever heard on an absolute scale of headphones in terms of how its ability to do positional effects. That's just kind of HiFiMan's thing that they are really good at. Okay, but if something were to say be placed right here, the V2, just the way it did it, it's like right there. It's like, hey, listen to me, I'm coming from right here. Okay? And then it puts some space between, and then there's another, hey, I'm right here, like kind of right next to it. The V2, or not, excuse me, not the V2, the SE is a little bit more coherent across the sound stage, across the entire sound field that way, where you still get this really clear sense if it's right here, and then you still get excellent separation, but it just sounds a little bit more natural and organic, like it's actually flowing across, and that it's like almost a higher resolution, if you will. Like there are more places in between where sound either can or cannot be coming from as compared to what this one does. So it's kind of like, you know, if you want to make an analogy to the visual medium, like with resolution and all that, it's kind of like 1080p imaging and separation, 4K or Ultra HD imaging and separation in that way, right? Like that's just kind of like, it's still more accurate, but it's more organic. It flows together a little bit better without ever sounding like it's ever muddled or anything like that. So that's one difference there. Now, because let's go back to Signature for a moment. Because these are a little bit warmer, their emphasis on the slam is a little bit higher in frequency. So these punch a little bit harder in the mid bass. These punch a little bit harder in the true deep sub bass. Okay, so that's just kind of a preference thing there. But in general, I think another thing that happens is the SE has a bit more overall clarity than the V2 does. And one, I think that's because the warmth here perceptibly muddies the sound just a little bit. Okay, you wouldn't really notice it unless you're doing a direct A/B, but these just sound a little bit clearer. And I think one reason is because it's not quite as warm. These still have a little bit of warmth, but just not the level that the V2 does. And then the other part of that is these are more resolving. They do a better job of pulling out particularly micro details. And so that's one reason I think helps with the clarity. Okay, which I know this video is already getting long, but that's okay. You guys love my depth, right? Okay, I'm gonna come back and talk about clarity and perceiving clarity here in a minute after I get to a couple of other comparisons. Okay, Susvara over my left shoulder there. Susvara, like the jump from here to here is substantial, but there's a slightly bigger yet jump in overall performance and technical proficiency from here up to there. The only thing that I can say that the HE1000 series does better than Susvara is soundstage size. These, because they just have bigger driver area and all of that, they just do huge and epic just a little bit more convincingly than Sus does. But Susvara still has like even more treble control yet. It has even more accurate imaging and separation, even more resolution, just you name it. Okay, outside of that soundstage size, like it is clearly the technically superior headphone, more natural sounding headphone, and all of that kind of stuff. Okay, much harder to drive though. These are a pretty easy drive. These are a bit of a load, but not terrible. Hard to drive. One of the hardest driving headphones out there right now. Okay, where does the HE1000se just fit in the high-end market generally? I prefer this one to the Dan Clark Expanse. I had reviewed the Expanse recently. This just has a richer, fuller sound to me. It has more resolution, better timbre, better spatial presentation, more accurate spatial presentation, particularly in the depth dimension than the Expanse does. And even though these are not dynamics monsters, like they are still noticeably superior in both macro and micro dynamics to the Expanse. Final D8000 Pro. I don't think is going to match these completely in its staging, although D8000 Pro is very good at that too. D8000 Pro has some of the most accurate bass that I have ever heard. Some of the most amazing bass resolution, texturing, pitch definition, to come with impact and all of that. Like a bass guitar sounds more like a bass guitar on a final D8000 Pro than I've heard on just about any other headphone, including these, including Sus. Okay, but these are still very good. The D8000 Pro, what undoes that one for me is that I think the mid-range is a little bit tonally imbalanced, makes them sound slightly nasally, shouty, honky to me, so that to me is a bit of a deal breaker on that one. LCD5. LCD5 is going to be, like, if you like more present vocals and a bit more mid-forwardness, that's where it is. LCD5 is going to be more dynamic than these. LCD5 also has amazingly good imaging, separation, all of that, but it's not going to sound as big as these. Okay, it's also going to be a little bit easier to drive yet than these here too. So that's a quick comparison with LCD5. Utopia, at least the original Utopia at $4,000, I think is it's a different presentation altogether. Like a Utopia is going for a little bit different sound. It's a little bit more fun. It brings more macrodynamic impacts. It excels in the depth dimension almost to an exaggerated degree at times. But it also, like, it's a dynamic driver versus a planar. I don't think that this and Utopia are really ever going to be competitors. I think they're going to be more complements. So there's that too. It's like you get two very different presentations and sounds, but two very enjoyable in each of their own ways. I mean, I also really like Utopia. And looking forward to reviewing the new one, coming soon. Abyss. The 1266, the Diana series and all of that, you're going to get more bass out of those, save maybe the TC. The TC is a bit of a mess. Okay, but you're going to get more bass out of those, but I think I would take the Hekse over those in any and every other way. Honestly, I would. Okay, and then Meze Elite. This is what the Meze Elite wants to be and comes nowhere near. Okay, I'm just gonna leave that there. All right. So some final thoughts. Like, obviously I like this headphone, and I want to come back real quick to this thing about clarity that I mentioned, and like why the 2K range here might be pulled back from the Harman target just a little bit. And I've mentioned that one is like, if that 2K region is brought up, it kind of pushes vocals forward a little bit, and it can mess with the spatial integrity. And spatial presentation is one of the selling features of this headphone and HiFiMans in general, I think. So does it lack mid-range clarity? I'm going to say no, because another way to get clarity is to have amazing resolution. And I think HiFiMan is comfortable pulling that 2K region down a little bit from the Harman target that others try to hit, and what a lot of other headphone makers push forward a little bit, because they know that their drivers have the resolution chops to still give very good clarity. Because there are two ways you can get clarity, as I mentioned. One is to play frequency response games, push the 2K region or the 3K region, like, you know, put a peak at either one of those, kind of push that forward. And a lot of people will hear that and go, oh, look how clear that is. And then again, but the only reason you should do that, in my opinion, as a headphone maker, the only reason is if you know you don't have the resolution to pull off clarity either. These have it. Sus has it. Heck V2 has it, right? I think HiFiMan has struck a good balance there of leaving that range back where the vocals and all that still feel like they are organically part of the spatial presentation, but are still clear and clean and intelligible because the resolution is really good. Okay, that's a lot. Let's wrap it up. $3,500 USD. I think it's worth every penny of that. HiFiMan is running a deal where if you have one of these, you can trade this in plus 1,000 USD and get one of these. Okay. Excellent headphone. I love it. HiFiMan has agreed to let me hang on to it for a while as a reference, so I'm going to do that to compare some other things too. So excited about that. The V2 is still an amazing headphone. This costs $2,000 US right now, and that is just flat out one of the best deals in hi-fi right now. Okay, so if you have an amp and a DAC that can handle those well, amazing deal. Plus, with that trade-in that I just mentioned, that essentially makes this a $3,000 headphone, plus a few weeks, whatever the time frame is that they will accept that trade-in for. So, here we go. HE1000se, an improvement in the HE1000 series. Excellent resolution, excellent detail retrieval, decent dynamics, amazing sound staging, imaging, separation, spatial presentation generally. It's comfortable, it looks good, it has a wiring schematic that works with a wide range of aftermarket cables and all of that. And I was amazed how quickly that this one worked its way in. It just started to become the headphone that I reached for to test things, particularly amps and all of that, because it earned my trust very quickly. And then Susvara showed up, and then that one kind of became that for a lot of things, but not everything can drive Susvara, and so that's where this will come in, and all of that. So, bravo again, HiFiMan. You continue to impress me with your open back planars. Your closed backs, ask again later. Okay, but good job. All right. I am Wave Theory. This has been my review of the HiFiMan HE1000se. If you have not subscribed, please do that. Please leave a like. Check out my Patreon. Check out my PayPal. Links in the description below. And as always, enjoy the music.